Tom Petty's widow Dana believes her husband's sudden and heartbreaking death in October of 2017 could have been completely prevented. Is she right? Keep watching because we have some very important answers that were revealed in Petty's official autopsy report, and the full story behind this legendary musician's final days is one that the entire world needs to hear and understand. Tom Petty was born on October 20th, 1950 in Gainesville, Florida. He grew up in a household that was not always easy or comfortable. His father was a tough man and their relationship was difficult and complicated. But despite the challenges at home, young Tom found something that would change his life forever and give him a reason to keep going. He found music. As a young boy, he became completely fascinated and obsessed with the sounds coming out of his radio and record player. He idolized the Beatles and Elvis Presley with a passion that went far beyond what most kids his age felt. For Tom, it was not just about enjoying the music, it was about feeling something deep inside that he could not put into words. Music spoke to him in a way that nothing else in his life ever had. It filled the empty spaces and gave him a sense of purpose and belonging that he desperately needed. Seeing the young boy's passion and dedication to music, his uncle took him to meet Elvis Presley on a film set when Tom was just 11 years old. That single encounter was enough to completely seal his fate. Standing in the presence of the king of rock and roll, Tom Petty made a decision right there and then. He was going to be a musician, he was going to dedicate his entire life to making music, and he was never going to look back. That meeting with Elvis lit a fire in Tom that would never go out for the rest of his life. It was the spark that set everything in motion. Not long after that life-changing encounter, Tom Petty began teaching himself how to play the guitar. He practiced constantly, sometimes for hours every single day, working through the pain in his fingers until calluses formed and the notes started flowing more naturally. He was not the most naturally gifted player right from the start, but what he lacked in natural ability he more than made up for with sheer determination and an unstoppable drive to improve. He listened carefully to the music he loved and worked hard to recreate it, learning from the records he played over and over again on his turntable until he had every note and chord change memorized. He was hungry to learn, and nothing was going to stand in his way. In high school, Tom Petty began playing bass guitar in a local band. Playing with other musicians for the first time opened up a completely new world for him. He discovered the incredible feeling of creating music together with other people, the way different instruments could come together to create something much bigger and more powerful than any one of them could produce alone. He loved the energy and the excitement of performing live, even if their early gigs were small and the crowds were not very big. Every performance was a learning experience, and Tom soaked it all up like a sponge. He was becoming a real musician, and he knew it. At the age of 17, Tom Petty made a decision that shocked many of the people around him. He dropped out of high school to focus entirely on his music career. For a lot of people, this seemed like a crazy and irresponsible choice. Dropping out of school without a diploma was considered a very risky move, and most people around him thought he was throwing his future away. But Tom Petty did not see it that way at all. He saw the decision as the only logical thing to do. He knew with absolute certainty what he wanted to do with his life, and sitting in a classroom felt like a tea of precious time he could be spending playing music. He had a dream, and he was willing to sacrifice everything to chase it. After dropping out of school, Tom threw himself completely into his music. He played in various local bands around Gainesville and began building a reputation as a talented and committed musician. He was writing his own songs and developing his own unique musical voice, blending the rock and roll influences he had grown up loving with newer sounds that were emerging in the music world around him. He was finding himself as an artist, and the process was exciting even though the financial rewards were essentially non-existent at this stage of his career. Tom was essentially broke, but he was doing exactly what he loved, and that was more than enough for him. In 1974, Tom Petty took what would turn out to be one of the most important steps of his entire career. He packed up his belongings, loaded up a whole stack of recorded tapes, and moved to Los Angeles, California, with his band Mudcrutch. They were chasing the dream that so many young musicians chase, the dream of making it big in the music industry. Los Angeles was the place where careers were made and stars were born, and Tom Petty and his bandmates were determined to become part of that world. They arrived in LA full of hope and excitement and ready to work as hard as necessary to make their dreams come true. However, the reality of the music industry turned out to be much tougher than any of them had anticipated. Mudcrutch released a single hoping it would catch fire and launch their career, but unfortunately the song did not make much of an impact on listeners or on the music industry executives they were trying to impress. The record did not perform well and the disappointment was crushing. After the failed single, the band struggled to maintain momentum and eventually Mudcrutch broke up, leaving Tom Petty without a band and facing an uncertain future in a city that was full of other talented musicians all competing for the same limited opportunities. It would have been very easy for Tom Petty to give up at this point. A lot of people in his position would have packed their bags and gone back home. But Tom Petty was not built that way. He did not know how to quit. Despite the failure of Mudcrutch, the record label had seen enough of Tom's raw talent and potential to offer him a solo recording contract. This was the break he had been working toward, and he was not going to waste it. With renewed determination and energy, Tom began working on what would become the foundation of his greatest musical achievement. Together with some of his former Mudcrutch bandmates, including guitarist Mike Campbell and keyboardist Ben Montench, along with 2 additional musicians, Tom Petty formed what would become one of the greatest rock bands in American music history. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were born. The chemistry between the band members was immediately apparent. They clicked together in a way that felt completely natural and effortless, each musician bringing their own unique strengths and personality to the group while working together as a perfectly unified whole. The Heartbreakers were not just a backing band for Tom Petty. They were genuine partners and collaborators who helped shape the sound and identity of everything they created together. The band launched their self-titled debut album in 1976, and while it was not an overnight sensation, it established them as a serious and exciting new force in American rock music. Critics and music lovers who heard the album recognized something special in Tom Petty's raw, honest songwriting and the band's tight, powerful sound. The record laid the groundwork for what was to come, and Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers wasted no time building on that foundation. Over the following years, the band released album after album of memorable, brilliantly crafted rock music that connected deeply with audiences all across America and eventually all around the world. Songs like Breakdown, American Girl, Refugee, Free Fallin', Learning to Fly, and I Won't Back Down became anthems for generations of music lovers who found meaning and comfort and excitement in Tom Petty's honest and relatable songwriting. His lyrics spoke about real human experiences, about love and loss and struggle and perseverance, and the search for freedom and authenticity in a world that often tried to push people into boxes they did not want to fit into. People connected with his music because it felt true and genuine in a way that was increasingly rare in the world of commercial popular music. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were not just a recording act. They were a legendary live band whose concerts were known for their incredible energy, warmth, and musicianship. Tom Petty had an extraordinary ability to connect with his audience in a way that made everyone in the room feel like they were being personally spoken to. He had a natural charisma and authenticity on stage that could not be faked or manufactured. People left his concerts feeling uplifted and inspired, and that feeling kept them coming back again and again for decade after decade. The band's fan base grew and grew over the years, spanning multiple generations of music lovers who all felt an equally deep and personal connection to the music. In addition to his work with the Heartbreakers, Tom Petty also pursued various solo projects throughout his career that showcased different aspects of his musical personality and artistic range. His solo debut album, Full Moon Fever, released in 1989, became one of the best-selling albums of that entire decade and produced some of his most beloved and recognizable songs. The album showed that Tom Petty's songwriting gifts were not dependent on any particular musical setting but could shine just as brightly in a more stripped-down solo context. It remains one of the most beloved albums in classic rock history and a testament to Tom Petty's extraordinary talent as a writer and performer. Tom Petty was also known for his remarkable ability to collaborate with other major artists across different musical genres and generations. Perhaps most famously, he became a member of the legendary Traveling Wilburys supergroup alongside Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Roy Orbison, and Jeff Lynne. The group released two albums in the late 1980s and early 1990s that became genuine classics, beloved by music fans all over the world. Being part of that extraordinary group of musicians meant the world to Tom Petty, and the experience deepened his already profound love and respect for the history of rock and roll music that he had grown up worshiping. He genuinely could not believe that he was making music alongside people who had been his heroes since childhood, and he approached every session with the same enthusiasm and gratitude of a devoted fan who had somehow been invited to sit in with his idols. Over the course of his remarkable career, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers released a total of 13 studio albums, each one containing songs that would go on to become classics. Tom himself also released 3 solo studio albums that added to an already extraordinary legacy. The sheer volume and consistent quality of the music he produced over more than 4 decades in the music business placed him firmly among the greatest rock musicians America has ever produced. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2002, a recognition that was long overdue and universally celebrated by the music community and by the millions of fans who had been following his career for decades. But behind the music and the success and the fame, there was a much more complex and difficult personal story unfolding that most people on the outside never fully saw or understood. Tom Petty struggled with significant personal demons throughout much of his adult life, and those struggles would ultimately play a direct role in his tragic and premature death. Tom Petty's first marriage to Jane Benyo ended in divorce after many years together, and the breakdown of that relationship affected him deeply and painfully. The end of his marriage sent him spiraling into a very dark place emotionally, and he began using heroin as a way to numb the pain and escape from the overwhelming feelings of loss, failure, and emptiness that consumed him during that period of his life. In his own words, speaking openly about his addiction in Warren Zane's detailed and revealing biography titled Petty, the biography, Tom described his heroin addiction as an ugly thing. It was a remarkably honest and courageous admission from a public figure of his stature, and it helped many fans understand a side of his life that had previously been hidden from view. Tom Petty tried to quit using heroin and genuinely wanted to break free from the addiction that was controlling his life. But addiction is not something that simply goes away because a person decides they want to stop. It is a powerful and complex disease that attacks both the body and the mind, and it requires professional help and sustained effort and support to overcome. Tom went through periods of sobriety followed by relapses, struggling to maintain the clean life he wanted to live, while also dealing with the constant pressures and temptations that came with being a famous musician who was constantly on the road and surrounded by people and situations that made staying clean extremely difficult. Eventually, Tom Petty found love again with his second wife, Dana York, whom he married in 2001. Dana brought stability and warmth and love back into his life, and their relationship gave him a renewed sense of purpose and happiness. By most accounts, his second marriage was a genuinely happy one, and Dana became his closest companion and most devoted supporter through all the challenges that lay ahead. She was by his side through everything, and her love for him was deep and unconditional. But Tom's health problems were not behind him. As he got older, his body began to show the effects of decades of hard living, constant touring, and the physical strain of performing at the highest level night after night, year after year. By the time he reached his mid-60s, Tom Petty was dealing with a collection of serious and painful medical conditions that would have caused many people to step back from performing and focus on rest and recovery. He had coronary artery disease, which is a serious condition affecting the blood vessels that supply the heart with oxygen and nutrients. He was taking medication for emphysema, a severe lung disease that makes breathing difficult, Sonnet 4.6,